I mean, 9 games, 10 points. I mean, there's only a couple of teams that could ever blow that. Not going to name any horse in a 2-team race that finished third, but
hello and welcome to episode 29 of the First4LCFC Podcast, and it's another lockdown special, but this could be the last one, at least in footballing terms, as the return of the Premier League is on the horizon finally, with games coming thick and fast between now and the end of July. So we've got games to preview, transfer rumours to address, and everything else Leicester City to discuss. Joining me to do so is one regular, other First4LCFC admin, Christian Mosin, and our stateside Foxes fan, Austin Forbes. How are you guys doing?
Very well, thank you, Jamie.
Doing good, thank you.
Thanks for joining me. Right, so we can get straight back into it. Obviously, with the big news that the fixtures have been released, the government's green-lighted it. Football is finally coming back. We don't need to pretend to like German football anymore. So, are we excited about it? Are we looking forward to watching a bit of Premier League again?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like you say, the German football, it's good to have something back on our screens, but I don't know. It's like, I think it's mainly like the lack of sort of player knowledge. Maybe if you're watching something like Bayern, you obviously know that they've got the stars and stuff. But watching something like Freiburg versus, I don't know, Dusseldorf, like, it doesn't grip me. But then if you say like, oh, let's watch Brighton versus Everton or something as mundane as sound, I'd much rather watch it. So I'm looking forward to it, definitely.
Yeah. It'd be really good to have it back. Well, obviously, this isn't going to be football as we know it. No crowds and all of that, as we've seen how it's gone down in the Bundesliga. So how do we think that's going to play out then? Do we think it's going to sort of lessen the enjoyment of it, or is it going to have any impact in the sort of results? What do you reckon?
It's definitely not going to lessen the impact of it because, games are going to happen no matter what. Relegation is going to change. Championships going to change. So you just got to kind of move on with it. And I think Chris and I were speaking earlier, and he stated the fact I didn't know that most of the away teams are winning the Bundesliga. And I think that, obviously the Bundesliga isn't as deep as the Prem. So I think it's a little bit different some of those times, but I think that it will have an effect for certain teams that are maybe fighting relegation that need that support and that crave it and helps them push forward, and them not having that's going to really hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think we're going to find it interesting. Obviously, at the top of the table, you've got Liverpool basically crowned champions, and then the following pack are fighting for Champions League, and then European football in general. But then there is going to be like a handful of teams in the mid-table, which I think they're the ones that are really going to struggle in terms of motivation. Because if you've got a crowd there, you've got to play for your fans. But if these teams know that there's little to play for, maybe not necessarily in week 1 or week 2 of this resumption, but towards the end of the season, if there's going to be a few dead rubbers, and I think they're the ones that we can discard from the wanting to watch pile. But in terms of like the relegation battle, it'll be interesting to see if these teams can really get up for it, because they're going to have to come straight back in week 1 and go for it all guns blazing. They won't have the fans on, like, all of that. It goes out the window. So it's going to be interesting. I think that's why a lot of teams have returned to playing behind closed doors for these pre-season matches, if you like, just to get used to the atmosphere above all else.
Because there are certain teams which definitely rely on their home form, don't they, more than others, and that really, really struggle away. I think if you take certain clubs down towards the bottom, or the sort of the Burnleys of this world as well, they rely on that atmosphere and that almost the intimidation factor. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on without the crowds around. But Austin, you referenced it in the Bundesliga with the greater away wins. Do you think that is as a result of the sort of players being able to rely more on their technical ability rather than the emotional side of the game?
I mean, I think it's got a little bit to do with both, I think. And I mean, obviously the fans are integral in the game, and it also, like, you'll see a lot more results of bigger teams beating the smaller teams because obviously they have more technical ability and they're just a better team than the other one, and that the crowd support just isn't there to push that smaller team. Like, you have a look at a team like Brighton, who had a couple decent results this year, and one of them is including when they beat Tottenham. And, like, if you think about it, like, behind closed doors, Tottenham should beat Brighton, but it is Tottenham, so anything's possible. But I mean, the fans that was a really great atmosphere that day, and when Brighton beat Tottenham. So I think you'll just see a lot less results like that one with no fans.
So, Chris, where do you think that leaves Leicester then? Like, because we're a bit of an interesting side in that we have got a great amount of technical ability, but we also do better at home traditionally. So do you think that Leicester are going to be better off or worse off with the lack of fans in the ground?
Yeah, I found myself thinking this maybe end of last week. So obviously we tweeted it and I said, technically speaking, where are Leicester City in terms of the Premier League table? And I don't think I can pinpoint it either. Like, I've been critical. I think we've all been critical of the atmosphere at the King Power at various points this season and in previous seasons. When it's good, it's really good. But equally, if it's a boring stalemate, it can be a library as well. We're not one of these clubs that are well known for our home atmosphere. So for me, it does go down to the technical ability of the players and how well focused Brendan can get them. Because for me, Liverpool and Man City are up there in terms of they're untouchable. They still have to play each other. Which by that stage could be a dead rubber, but they're on par. But everyone else, you've got that. It's just like it's a lot more black and white for me. I think in terms of the lack of fans, I think it could benefit certain players. I think players such as Chilwell, who I know we'll speak about later, but Chilwell and Barnes for me, I've always highlighted as confidence players, and I think that sort of player is just going to feel unleashed. I feel like the shackles are off. They haven't got this crowd. So maybe the younger, less experienced players will come to the fore for me. That's my prediction anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that almost every week clubs are sharing videos of these absolute wonder goals in training. I think it's the lack of pressure in training matches means that players will try different things and have the confidence to take them on. And you're right, that will suit the likes of Barnes. What do you think the impact is going to be on Jamie Vardy? Notoriously likes to sort of rustle opposition fans as best he can. And obviously he's chasing that record Premier League goal. So what do you reckon the impact will be on his performance?
I don't think Jamie Vardy will be affected. I think he's the sort of guy who's already thinking about how he will, in the nicest possible way, will still be able to rustle or become the centre of attention once he gets 100 goals through his celebration. It might even be an ironic sort of put your finger to the ears in front of an empty ground. Like, that's literally what he'll do. And that will still get the headlines for him. So I don't doubt for a second that he will not be affected by this.
Yeah, we just need the Tannoy man to sort of pump in some songs about Mrs. Vardy, and then he's guaranteed to bag a few goals. But I agree with you. I think he's just that sort of player that just absolutely loves scoring goals for fun. And that is likely, hopefully we'll see it, and hopefully we'll see him get that record. Brendan Rodgers has, however, revealed some fairly unique motivation to try and get players up for the game. He's told them to go and watch the Last Dance, that documentary about the Chicago Bulls, in order to learn what it is to be an elite player. Not so sure about that. That sounds like a classic Rodgerism to me. So obviously Leicester have got one game coming up as another warm up behind closed doors against Aston Villa, and then we face Nigel Pearson's Watford. It'll be a shame, obviously, for us not to be able to sort of welcome him back in a way. But I mean, how do you see that going? It feels so long since we had football. I'm not really sure how to predict it. Form's gone and stuff. So, what do you make of the game?
I mean, I think if you look at the teams on paper, we should obviously win that game pretty easily. But I think with the fact that we took 2 months off, you don't really know how a team could show up. Watford obviously battling relegation. You know Nigel's gonna have them ready. So it really just depends on how we show up. Because if we show up like we can, then I think it would be a walk in the park. But we have shown a lot of times this season that we will not show up. And Watford has shown this season that they will beat better teams. So, I mean, some would say they beat Liverpool because of the crowd. Never know. So, it'll be interesting.
What do you reckon, Chris?
I have to mirror what Austin says, and we're all going into this blind, aren't we? My only observation, and I can only draw reference to the Bundesliga. For me, watching this, which is the third round of matches I think it was this weekend, since its resumption, is a lot more enjoyable for me than the first week. I found the first week was awfully lethargic. It did feel like a training ground sort of match. I feel that's, like Austin says, they've had 2-3 months out. You know, the first week isn't going to be fireworks. But so I think if there's going to be any upsets, it could be in that first week. But like 11 versus 11, our team is better, technically speaking. So yeah, it would be an upset if we lost. But I don't see us losing home or away. I think it's we're the best team.
So Leicester played that game behind closed doors where obviously, you know, they need to get a certain amount of players on the pitch. So there were a few people who we haven't seen feature for the first team a lot, if at all, this season, who were on the pitch. So the likes of your favourite Kapuchka, Matty James. What do you reckon the likelihood is of any of these players making the squad? James in particular, Chris. Do you think that might be a bit of a curveball for Rodgers to bring someone like him back?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, through those cryptic highlights that the club, it's extremely well edited, but not great viewing pleasure, is it? It's more cinematic than anything. Did we even figure out what the score was? I think I came to 1-1.
I think it was 1-1, yeah. With Ndidi and Iheanacho.
It was a classic Ndidi goal, wasn't it? He just steps onto the box and it makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
But no, in terms of answering your question, if we've got a fully fit squad, well, which we haven't, because obviously, you know, you've got Ricardo being the main one missing, but that doesn't really affect James. I don't see James or Kapuska or anyone. I just like the starting 11 for me should be pretty much mirrored what it was against Aston Villa. But I say that knowing that now there's 5 substitutes and fatigue is likely to be an issue. Just probability speaking, he is more likely now to enter the fray again, which before lockdown, we wouldn't have thought to see Matty James in a Leicester shirt ever again. I wouldn't have thought anyway.
There's got to be something said for the fact that, I mean, obviously the club have stood by an injured player, which I think is great, but there's got to be every single manager that has been in charge of Matty James has had nothing but overwhelming positive things to say about him. I mean, Austin, do you read anything into that? Do you think that he has been desperately unlucky, but he still does have the class, or are they simply just trying to motivate a player to get himself back from injury?
I think he definitely has the ability that everyone says he does. I just think the hard thing is we haven't really been able to see it in action in the Premier League. And I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time he had a sustained run in the team. It's been a long time. But I mean, obviously, I don't know if y'all saw when he nutmegged Harry Maguire 3 times in a row. that was one of the funniest things ever. But I mean, he's got that ability. I mean, sometimes it just takes something just to bring it out, but he's definitely been unlucky. I mean, we've definitely looked to bolster our midfield, and he was just a guy that just kind of got put to the side.
I mean, we'd obviously all be thrilled to see him come back. It's that he has endured nothing short of hell, I think, and desperately unlucky. And he was great in that Great Escape season. Him and Cambiasso, wasn't it? Drinkwater couldn't get a look in, so he's clearly got that ability. But I think that the squad depth is a thing that is going to play a massive part. Like you said, Chris, we can use 5 subs, and the games really, really do come thick and fast. There's a immensely packed schedule. Does that worry you at all as a Leicester fan? Because we've spoken on this podcast a couple of times about the perceived lack of depth in Leicester's squad outside of the first team. So does that concern you at all?
Well, I've got the fixtures up, confirmed revised fixtures. So what concerns me is that we have people or pundits or ex-players complain that fixture congestion is bad, and that's when these players are at their peak, say going into Christmas time. But we're returning from a matter of months off, and imagine if this was the start of a regular season. You've got a game on the 20th, the 23rd, the 27th, and then the 1st. That is exactly why you need 5 substitutes, and it could be quite unusual, but you could see a starting lineup with a player turnover of 5 or 6, because a 3-day break, 3.5 days ultimately, between Watford and Brighton. We're lucky that they're not the most technically skilled team, because I bet some teams have got a nightmare first couple of games, because that is going to be strenuous, no matter how. Nothing will replicate a competitive fixture, and that is going to take a lot of fatigue out of the players.
I mean, yeah, like you said, we've got in July, I think we've got 7 games, and we had 8 in December, which is a notoriously packed part of the season. So it's how Leicester respond to that. So you look outside of key positions in the middle, and you've got the likes of Chowdhury, Mendy. So James is likely going to see some minutes, I'd say. But it's probably at centre half where we're the thinnest, aren't we? We've got Big Wes, and that's largely it, isn't it?
Well, to be fair, I'm reluctant to criticise him, because he's one of those players that just doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing, really, because he's never been one that he's not going to wow you, because he's obviously a centre back. He's not a flair player, but what he's just done so consistently. He was our Premier League title winning captain, and I'd go as far as saying understated. He's like a no nonsense centre back, if we're going to use a Football Manager terminology. He literally does the job. But yeah, then you look at Sionchu, Evans, and it doesn't really sort of go much deeper than that. You've got maybe Fuchs, who's willing to step in, but
but that's it. We're all forgetting about the long lost man. We can take the bloody missing posters down. Ryan Bennett might actually reappear.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Has he played yet?
He has not.
Yeah. I don't remember him playing.
I'm not even sure if he's managed to appear on the bench yet. He's been absolutely out of it. So I suppose then, looking ahead to the first game in particular, the starting 11 sort of picks itself, doesn't it? The only question mark being Pereira's injury. He didn't feature in that game.
Yeah. Like I said, I think for me, it'll be interesting to see what Austin thinks. But for me, I can't see any, unless Rodgers has seen something in training, as the aforementioned James or anyone else returning, that he really thinks deserves a start. I can't really think of an argument to suggest we should be dropping anyone else from that Aston Villa team, which seems like an absolute lifetime ago.
I mean, Hamza Chowdhury did play at fullback he did play right back during the scrimmage game, so you never know. But I mean, I think the obvious person to come in is Justin. But I think other than that, I don't see anything different. Maybe Iheanacho in for Perez, but that's maybe the only person I could see come in.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that Villa lineup. It was actually kind of a strange one because you had Justin at left back, Ndidi and Pratt were your midfielders, and Albright and Barnes were the wingers, and Vardy obviously was coming back from injury, so he didn't start the game. I'd imagine that he will start this one probably. You're right. But it'll be interesting to see. I think that obviously Justin, the spotlight will very much be on him because as we've seen, the rumours are sort of starting to circle about Ben Chilwell, with rumours of him joining Chelsea gathering pace. And a lot of people have spoken about Justin as his direct replacement. Chris, what do you make of that?
I personally feel he's more than capable, and he's certainly more than deserving of a chance in the team. He's not really struggled to step up. I think at the times we have seen him, he seems more than accomplished. He seems more than confident enough. So yeah, for me, it'd be a shame to see us go out and spend any of the money we get for Chilwell, if we get for Chilwell, on a new wing back or fullback, because we've got one within our ranks. If anything, I'd like to see us maybe reinvest that money on another player from the lower leagues, or someone an unpolished diamond, if you like. Let's invest in the youth. I don't think we need to invest heavily, and we should use our resources wisely.
Yes, James Justin, he's only made 4 Premier League appearances this season, but hasn't really put a foot out of place in any of his games, and looks assured, looks as a quality player. But Austin, what do you make of the actual player moving away? Obviously, it's big money being touted for Chilwell. The club are apparently going to demand in excess of, I think it was 60 million was the figure bandied around. For that, are you happy to see him go? Would you prefer them to hold on to him?
I mean, it's tough because I think the only way that you would know if we really needed him is if he left, and we could really see if Justin could fill that spot. But I've always been on the side of, it's 60 million pounds, but it's $85 million. So it's like, there's just times I think you have to take the money. And if we got a direct replacement in Justin, and we're happy with that, obviously with Champions League next year, that's going to be a little bit tough because then we're going to be really thin fullback wise. But Chilwell's had a little bit of a rough patch, and like I read on Twitter, it's like it seems like it can't get any worse for him and some of his performances. And like y'all said, he's a huge confidence player, and he gets slated a lot. And and so I think, if he comes back to how he was, then obviously I don't think we get rid of him. But if let's say in these games he doesn't turn out good performances, then I think you get rid of, but also that value is going to dwindle down to what it was.
Yeah.
For me, there's another factor in this that we may be forgetting. Ultimately, we're selling to a direct competitor. So, as in any business, value becomes sort of, elastic, if you like that. Like, can you put a price on him? Because ultimately, we're giving potentially, say, Chelsea a player that we haven't got, so they're bolstering their squad whilst we're losing out. And in these uncertain times as well, how likely are we to demand a fee of £65 million? I know Chelsea, or there's a number of wealthy clubs out there, but everyone's been absolutely hit by it. We've read that Tottenham have had to take a bank loan of however many millions out. It's just these unprecedented times. So I don't know whether we're in a position where we're more forced to sort of get some money back or anything. But ultimately, for me, I think the biggest damage is that we're strengthening a team that we're in direct competition.
Absolutely. We're all sort of viewing a move to Chelsea as being, this huge step up. And obviously they are, in the traditional sense, a bigger club. And I'm not going to get dragged into one of those debates again. But at the moment, we're 5 points clear of them. We look like we've got a great chance at Champions League football. You'd have hoped that might be enough to convince a player such as Chilwell to stay. For what it's worth, I think that I agree with Austin in that I think the criticism that Chilwell gets is sometimes unfounded. He's definitely dipped after Christmas, don't get me wrong, but so has a lot of other players, and he just seems to be absolutely vilified for it. Leicester fans as a group always seem to need a bit of a scapegoat. I think we just quite enjoy it. This might just be Twitter talking, I don't know, and we know what that place is like, but it seems that he does come in for more than most. So, but I hope, he's England's left back. He's come through the academy. I'd like to think that we hold on to him. But if Justin does fill that gap, we are very short of fullbacks. That would mean Amati would be our only other cover at right back. And he's not really featured in a while either. So that would be a bit of a worry. Obviously, they've got Luke Thomas coming through the ranks, another youth player, but I'm not sure about him yet being good enough. So Leicester have obviously lost one player already, who we all discussed before, and whether this is us showing a lack of knowledge or not, I don't know, but we've never heard of him. Calvin Bassey has signed a pre-contract deal with Rangers. Any thoughts on that?
He must be pretty good, because ultimately, that's a great move for him. I mean, I know we slate the SPL, and yes, the standard of it isn't great, but he's pretty much guaranteed to be in a squad that's in Europe next year. So whichever level you sort of plying trading week in, week out, he's playing under Steven Gerrard, an icon, who's likely to probably attract maybe a couple of experienced players who are nearing their ends of their contracts. Players probably want to play under him, and it'll be a great opportunity for him. But yeah, certainly come out of nowhere, and I definitely cannot tell you anything about his game or anything along those lines.
No, it's just he was quoted online by someone as saying that he was the replacement for Chilwell, but I haven't really seen that or heard anything of it. Well, a player that we were linked with as a replacement by the press was Kieran Tierney from Arsenal. Is that a player that you've laughed, Austin? So I'm not sure it's a player you'd like to see come in, or would you rather we avoid that one?
That's a player I would love to see come in. He's 21, 22. He's younger than Chilwell. He hasn't got a run at Arsenal. I laughed because I talked to my Arsenal friend about it, and I keep messing with him that he's going to leave. And I told him if Arsenal get rid of Tierney after 1 year and he's 21, they would be the dumbest club I've ever heard of. There should be no reason that you get rid of him. And then he was playing career mode on FIFA, and we offered £22 million for him. So I started dying. But that's a player I would definitely love to come see. Obviously I wouldn't come see him, but he's 21. He's attacking minded. He's a really good prospect for the future if somehow he comes in.
That's what I mean, because if you asked us, I don't know, whilst he was at Celtic, I think a lot of our fans would have, bitten your arm off and said, yeah, we'll take him. But because he's sort of gone off the boil, or rumoured to have struggled to settle in London, he's all of a sudden sort of not rated as highly. Whereas I think that if he's surrounded by, maybe he settles in better in Leicester, in amongst the squad, I think we could have that player that we saw at Celtic, and that'd be a fantastic little, probably a bargain as well. I've not seen any figures, but I'd definitely welcome him.
But it's good to see that we're being linked with those sorts of players anyway, isn't it? I think if we could pull that off, it'd be a hell of a signing. There were some other names bandied around, but I just think that was just paper talk. I can't see it. It's Tagliafico from Ajax is one of the names which I just can't see. So other players being linked away. This is always going to happen this summer with us doing so well. One of which is Soyuncu. Gundogan has been quoted as saying that he'd love Soyuncu to join them at Man City, and that the Turkish player has been the second best performer in the league this year behind Virgil van Dijk. That's got to be something that we try and avoid, hasn't it, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know about this until I saw the agenda for this podcast. So I've not had long to sort of process it, but it's believable. Man City are unlikely to have been affected financially enough to prevent them going out and buying anyone. Man City have notoriously struggled at centre-back, in particular this season, since probably letting Company go maybe a season too soon and not having a replacement. Söyüncü is, in my opinion, he's definitely in the conversation to be the second best. If not, there's certain bits of me that could probably put an argument together that he is just as good as Van Dijk, because Van Dijk also has flaws. I think he's just sort of put up there so much in mainstream media as a godlike figure. But if you unpick his statistics, Liverpool have only conceded 7 goals less than us this season, and they're meant to be this sort of untouchable team. And I think if you look at his individual game, it's not all that great. It is great, but it's not as great as what people are likening to, like a prime Cannavaro or something, aren't they? So for me, it's believable, and it's where his head's at. He won't be playing consistently at Man City. He will be as part of a rotation, as most players are there. So it depends where his priorities are. If we get Champions League, I think he should stay, and most players will stay at least for another season.
Austin, is there anyone that you think could be tempted to leave? Is there anyone that particularly worries you?
I think outside of Chilwell, any current starters, I don't see them leaving as long as we got Champions League football. But maybe after next year, I think if we don't make it again, then I think you could see problems with Pereira and Ndidi, Söyüncü. A lot of those players. Then I think we go into a big problem there. But I think currently, other than players that we're looking to get rid of, I don't see any of our big players leaving unless for an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah. Weirdly, Maddison doesn't worry me at all. The player that does is actually Pereira. I said this earlier on the season. I could see a big club coming in for him and really testing our resolve. So let's hope not, because I don't see how we'd replace him. So look, obviously the big question on most of our minds though is whether Leicester are going to see it over the line and get Champions League football. Obviously, Chris, we asked this question just before, everything went to shit, but just before all the games stopped. And you were confident. Ed was still getting splinters and sat on the fence. Are you still confident? You still think that Leicester are gonna get it over the line?
My memory isn't the best at the best of times, but I'm looking at the table and mixing that with what I do remember from football. Man United are a form team. If they get Fernandes playing the way he was playing before this all went to shit, as you say, and somehow maybe managed to get, Pogba or anyone in and around him, they are going to be ending this season very strongly. You got Leicester, Chelsea, Man U, Wolves, and Sheffield United and Spurs, and then we'll probably chuck Arsenal in as well. We have got that 5 point cushion though, so let's not forget about that.
We talked about teams that are technical and that could do well. You look at that Man United side, and it's an extremely technical team in the middle. They've got very, very good players on the ball, but their fixture list is probably the tastiest of the lot. They played Tottenham first game back and Sheffield United, but then they faced Brighton, Bournemouth, Villa, Southampton, Palace, West Ham before travelling to Leicester on the last game of the season. So, that's a great run, isn't it? You've got to be slightly concerned about that, no?
Well, yeah, like you say though, that is a tricky run of games, and if you mix that with the fatigue and stuff, like Man United fans, they're probably the last set of fans that wanted any form of break, because, like say, if you're a form team, which them and Wolves are, they don't want any break in place. So it depends how they manage it. Let's face it, Man United shouldn't struggle with squad depth. They've got some good youth prospects coming through. We've seen them in the Europa League. It's interesting because let's not forget that we're still in the in the FA Cup as well.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of football to look forward to. It's hard to analyse. Let's face it. Like we're going to probably end this pod with some predictions for for Watford, and it's just hard to predict it. It really is. Football isn't going to be the same. But I do just have this hunch that technically better teams will just be winning, and the games are going to be a lot more easier to predict.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I hope they're easier to predict because I've not got a single one of these bloody predictions right. So if we might have a bit of a shock on our hands. But I mean, just quickly, Leicester's fixture list isn't quite as pleasant. Obviously, we face Watford and Brighton before Everton, Palace, Arsenal, Bournemouth, and then finish off with a horrible 3 of Sheffield United, Spurs, and then that game that I spoke about against Man United, with a FA Cup quarter-final in all of that as well. So, I mean, it's going to be a tricky run for Leicester, isn't it, Austin? I mean, are you retaining the same optimism as Chris, or are you ever so slightly more in the negative camp?
I mean, I'm very optimistic. I think we'll finish over the line, and I think what some people are forgetting is that City will be banned from the Champions League, so that means that Champions League places are 1, 3, 4, and 5. So I believe we have a 10-point gap on 6th. I hope we don't need it, but we do have that 10-point gap. Obviously, if somehow City wins their appeal, which I don't think they will, then I think, 9 games, 10 points. I mean, there's only a couple of teams that could ever blow that. Not going to name any horse in a 2-team race that finished 3rd, but I think we'll be okay. I think we could struggle a little bit. I think especially those last 3 games. I will say I hope we don't leave it late, because Tottenham could be a team that's looking for that's looking for any Europe in general. I know United's fighting for Champions League. I know for sure Sheffield's fighting for Europe, and if I can remember, I think Tottenham's away and United and Sheffield are at home. I mean, obviously there's no crowd, so you never know. But I think we'll be all right.
I think you've single-handedly provided us with potentially a very, very destructive soundbite if all does go to shit. With some of those predictions you've just made, comparing us to the famous bottlers in North.
I'm not comparing us. I'm just stating facts here.
Specialists in bottling down in North London. I mean, you're right. They'll be very, very keen to get themselves into Europe in one way or another. Personally, I'm desperate for both us and Sheffield United to do it. It'd be great to see Wolves as well. But obviously, there's a few clubs that are vying for that, aren't there? And it does mean there's a lot riding on all the games. Obviously, the top end of the table is obviously pretty much sewn up now. But there's a lot going on down at the bottom. And obviously, we're facing one of those relegated sides. So, Chris, now is the time for you to put your neck on the line. And Austin, predictions for the Watford game, please.
I'm going to be reserved for the first one. Again, basing it on Bundesliga, it's going to be low scoring, a training ground feel. I do think we'll get over the line though, with a 2-0 win, but it's not going to be it's not going to be a good watch. I do predict a slow 2-0 and VARDY to get his all-important century milestone goal.
Well, fingers crossed on that one. Austin?
I'm gonna go 2-1, and I think they're gonna get a goal at the end to make it 2-1. So I think we'll go up 2-0, and obviously I'm gonna pick VARDY to score that 100th goal. The other goal scorer, it could be really anyone from Soyuncu up to Barnes. So, but I think it'll be tough, like Chris said. Watford are going to come to play. You just know they will with their manager, and they do have some decent players that they have attacking wise. So you never know. Their defense is a little bit suspect at times, but I mean, if we come out to play, this should be a walk in the park, like I said earlier. So we'll see.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, Pearson's got them going pretty well. But again, I think we'll win. I've not been able to predict a Barnes goal in a few weeks, so obviously I'll say we'll win 3-0 with Harvey Barnes scoring all three.
Wow.
Goes without saying. But I would take even the most scrappy of 1-0 wins with an own goal or whatever. It wouldn't matter. Just I think a win is really important. Get that winning feeling back and get them on the way. So there we go. We've all put our necks on the line. It's normally about this time, Chris, when I ask if normally Ed's got something to throw in, but I mean, do you, Austin, have anything else you want to add?
No, just I can't wait for football to come back. It's going to be great. Premier League football. I was saying to Austin off there, like, we're used to, every 2 years having a tournament, and yeah, tournaments are good, but let's face it, having this much Premier League football to consume in 40 days? I think it's like 90 matches in 40 days. Oh my days, I cannot wait. It's going to be great fun, and it's going to be an interesting end to the season. I'm also interested to see, obviously how the FA Cup pans out. It would just be our luck to get to a final behind closed doors, but I'll take it. And also how the European competitions end as well. There's not been much talk about the Europa League or the Champions League, but ultimately I think they need to be finished by the end of August as well. So there's a lot of football to consume, and I cannot wait.
That's it. I mean, I think from when the games kick off on the 17th, inside that first week, we have about 17 games to watch, all on TV inside 7 days. It's going to be unbelievable. You're right. We're going to go from nothing to absolutely all of it straight away. But listen, guys, thank you very much for coming back on and being a part of the podcast as always. And thanks to everyone for listening and for your support. Please do subscribe, rate, like on whichever of your podcast providers you use. And we will leave it there. And hopefully we can talk about, 3 points and 100 goals for VARDY next time on the podcast.